3 miles off the coast of Hull lies the wreck of a World War I German U-boat, the UC-39. Launched in June of 1916, she lasted less than a year before being sunk by HMS Thrasher off the coast near Flamborough Head. In her 4 months of operational time, she sank 3 ships, a little over 5,000 tons, with either mines or torpedoes. And here she lies, in 30 metres depth, in the North Sea, the final resting place for 7 of her 24 crew. We approach the wreck down the anchor line to her port stern quarter. Seen on sonar imagery, she remains around 40 metres in length, split almost in two with her stern collapsed and her bow broken away up to the first bulkhead. We are immediately greeted with a plethora of marine life. She has clearly become an artificial reef home to thousands of fish. Her pressure hull is still reasonably intact, and from looking at the original layouts, we find ourselves at her engine room. Proceeding up her port side, we find her casing home to an abundance of soft coral and anemone. Moving up further brings us to her beam, where she is split in two and allows for easy access inside of the wreck. Here we see hundreds, if not thousands of fish clustering around this opening. Although a lot of her casing is broken away here, we can still see the original supporting arches. Moving further into the wreck, it's obvious that a lot of her internals have collapsed, although she's not massively silted up. Although the conning tower has long since collapsed, I imagine from the diagrams that this would have been the control room of the boat. Moving a little further forwards into the wreck, we see on our right side what would have been one of the main hatches, which lay just forward of the conning tower. This was also the location of a 3.5-inch deck gun. Moving any further forward becomes difficult due to the amount of collapsed material inside, but there are several holes that have opened up to leave by on our port side. Once again outside of the wreck, we can see those 2 holes clearly as we move up to her bow, and progressing further up, we find a rather interesting feature, her still relatively intact port bow plane. This would have been angled to allow the boat to either dive or surface. Now at the very front of the wreck, we find her bow almost completely gone. All that remains is her forward bulkhead. Now on her starboard side, we see her forward hatch. Although largely silted up, we can still see components from her battery bank that lay with the crew quarters. Moving further down her starboard side, we once again reach her waist, which is still filled with marine life. Here we see one of her main bulkheads with hatch, which allows us some views to her aft compartments. Moving swiftly round, we now reach her stern, which is well broken up. Looking through the wreckage, we can still see components from her propulsion system, although her propellers have been lifted many years ago, and are currently still held in Bridlington Harbour Heritage Museum. Taking a closer look under her panels, we see here a conger eel, with its tail visible on the right and head on the left. Just prior to ascending, we return to her waist, and I examine another bulkhead and hatch. It's astonishing to imagine that 24 men lived aboard her, transiting these hatches on a regular basis that I can barely squeeze through in my scuba gear. With our time on this piece of history nearly at a close, we return to the anchor line lit by strobes, and taking one last look at her, ascend back to the surface. Now in lighter waters, we complete the remainder of our deco obligation with our boat positioned above us, before finally making the journey back to shore.